Hey everyone, this is Dr. Nanai, and welcome to your chill out zone. If you like what you hear, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Welcome to your peaceful haven. Tonight, we'll dive into a story from a long time ago. As you lie in your cozy bed, let your mind drift with the gentle flow of the story. Slowly, gently, let your body loosen up. Find your most comfortable spot, maybe on your side with your spine softly curved or flat on your back, feeling the bed support you. Let your breaths become smooth and deep, breathing calm with each inhale and breathe out the day's tiredness with each exhale. When you're ready, roll onto your side, bend your knees a bit, place one hand on your knee and the other lightly on your belly. Now, take a deep breath in, feeling your belly gently rise. As you breathe out, slowly pull your belly back in. Imagine this gentle twist helps release tension in your back. Keep your breathing deep and steady. It'll help you sink into a deeper state of calm. Tonight, we're going back in time to discover a forgotten tale. It's a story about being alone, finding things, and quiet help. You are the main character, Edmund. You're not a hero or a famous person, just a regular lighthouse keeper. Fate pushed you to a wild, deep part of the ocean in northern Scotland. Picture yourself in Scotland in 1904. The sea air is sharp and salty. The supply boat is slowly pulling away, leaving you on a lonely rocky island. This island, Ailsa Craig, stands like a huge granite rock, all alone in the middle of the sea, surrounded by endless, ever-changing blue water. You, Edmund, have spent 20 years at the Ailsa Craig Lighthouse. These 20 years have been long, shaped by the sea wind. Your life follows the lighthouse's regular rhythm. Every morning, you polish the big lens so it shines in the sun. At night, you check the oil lamp to make sure it stays lit all night for returning ships. Your world is small, just the round room of the lighthouse, thick books with notes about the weather and supply boats, and the huge open sea outside your window. Imagine that lighthouse. It stands tall and strong, built from tough stones, like a lone guard against constant strong winds and heavy rain. The outside walls are always wet with the sea salt deep in every stone. As you climb the winding stone steps, you can feel the cold stone under your fingers. Each step is smooth from many years of use. At the top of the lighthouse is the big lamp room. Its glass windows are super clean, so the bright light can cut through even the thickest fog. Your days are simple and the same. Day after day, year after year, the sea wind is your only friend, and seagulls are your most common visitors. The supply boat comes only every few months, bringing you what you need to live, and sometimes a few letters from far away. These letters often smell old and are full of small details about family members you've grown distant from. You always read them quietly, then carefully put them away, as if they were special old things that don't fit into your life now. Here, time seems to slow down. You're used to this pace, used to the wind whispering in your ears, used to the sound of waves hitting the rocks. That sound never stops, like an endless lullaby. Your hands are rough and calloused from the sea air, but your mind is very calm. This calm isn't a complete peace. It's more like a deep-seated patience, a special toughness formed from fighting against nature for a long time. But in this world that seems to stay the same forever, small changes are quietly starting to happen. One calm afternoon, to pass the long hours, you opened a dusty wooden box in the storage room at the base of the tower. Inside were the old lighthouse logs left by keepers before you. The covers were leather, and the pages were yellow and brittle. You carefully opened one, and the neat handwriting recorded the tides, storms, and passing ships from decades ago. You read about daily life that was just like yours, feeling as if you were talking to someone you'd never met, sharing the same loneliness and dedication. When you finished a logbook and turned to the last page, you saw a small, single line of writing below the messy handover notes. It was in a completely different handwriting, as if added much later, and it said, "They came from the mist." This sentence made you feel a little confused. You picked up another, even older logbook from a keeper you'd never even heard of. You flipped right to the end. After the usual handover notes, you saw the same sentence again, written in a totally different fancy script, like a secret mark of ink. they came from the mist. This sentence, like a riddle passed down through generations, caused a big ripple in your calm mind. You didn't know what they were, but you knew for sure that this wasn't just someone's imagination. It was a secret that all your predecessors had seen. From that day on, how you felt about the sea fog began to change. On those very foggy days, you always felt something strange, something you couldn't quite put your finger on. The fog seemed alive, wrapping around the lighthouse. Sometimes you thought you heard faint, unnatural sounds, like a soft rubbing, or maybe something swimming silently in the water. Occasionally, you'd stand by the window, staring into that milky white curtain, trying to catch a glimpse of something unusual, but the fog was always too thick, covering everything. All you could see was a messy blur. Day after day, you kept doing your work, but that sentence, "they came from the mist," stayed in your mind like a quiet hint. You started to pay more attention to those foggy nights, those moments when the sea wind howled. Your senses became sharper, trying to catch something unknown hiding in the quiet. You believed that deep inside you, a new understanding was slowly growing, spreading out quietly in the lonely sea of your life, like seaweed. As you kept watching over the lighthouse on the lonely island, your first questions started to show up clearly in your diary. You, Edmund, began writing down more and more of those unusual events. They were no longer just vague feelings, but things you actually saw, clearer and clearer. Imagine a night covered in thick fog, with the lighthouse beam struggling to cut through the white haze. You were doing your usual rounds in the lamp room, making sure everything was working right. But then, something outside the window caught your eye. In the dense fog, you thought you saw faint points of light. They were floating in the air like fireflies, but they had a strange, deep blue glow, as if from the bottom of the ocean. What these lights weren't still, they drifted slowly in the fog. Sometimes they gathered together, forming a bigger, pulsing light patch. They were so faint that for a moment, you wondered if your tired eyes were playing tricks or if the fog was just bending the light, but these lights started showing up more often. You began to describe them in your diary, using simple words to try and capture how they look. Like jellyfish, but not jellyfish, they float in the fog, glowing blue. You even wrote about some of their strange action. They seem to copy what I do. When I lift my hand, the lights in the fog gently move too. This discovery made you feel a little excited, but also a bit in awe. They were so strange, so unlike anything you knew. You weren't scared. Instead, after being alone for so long, their appearance was like a ship suddenly showing up on the horizon, breaking your quiet, everyday life. You started to wonder, what are these creatures? Where did they come from? You still kept up your strict lighthouse keeper duties, checking the gears to make sure they turned smoothly and the lamp wick stayed lit. But as you did your daily checks, you started to notice some small changes. Now, lie on your side with your knees slightly bent, keeping your spine naturally relaxed. As you breathe in deeply, imagine oxygen filling your entire lungs. As you breathe out, gently twist your upper body towards the bed, feeling a soft stretch in your spine. Be careful not to force your body. Let each breath come with relaxation and a small movement. This pose helps calm your body, preparing you for deeper peace as the story continues. One time, you found a small problem that had been bothering you for a while. A brass gear for adjusting the lamp wick. It always got stuck, and you had to push hard to turn it. But one very foggy morning, when you went to check it, you found it was surprisingly smooth, like it had just been oiled. What time is it now? You looked closely at the gear, but there were no signs that anyone had touched it and no oil stains. This confused you, but soon, similar things started happening. Your diary entries became more detailed. Today, found the rust on the north windowsill cleaned, not by me. Yesterday, the wind vane seemed more accurate, as if someone had fixed it. These small, unexplainable changes made you start to connect them with the glowing creatures in the fog. You began to suspect that these mysterious, jellyfish-like creatures weren't just floating in the fog. They seemed to be helping you in a way you couldn't understand. This understanding came slowly, little by little, You didn't jump to conclusions right away. Instead, with a scientist's calm and curiosity, you wrote down every strange thing in your diary. You noticed that whenever those lights hovered around the lighthouse, some small miracles would happen. They seemed to have a strange power, able to quietly make tiny fixes to the lighthouse's machines or its surroundings. You started watching by the lighthouse window on those foggy nights. You saw their shapes more clearly. Those deep blue lights didn't come from inside them, but seemed to be a kind of glow on their bodies. Their bodies were see-through, like jelly, with a core inside that pulsed regularly. They didn't have clear eyes or mouths, but they moved in such a smooth and purposeful way. You even wrote in your diary, "They seem to be watching me. When I work on the machines, the lights come closer to the window as if they are learning." This feeling was subtle. You didn't interact with them in any way, but you felt their presence. You felt them quietly being a part of your lonely lighthouse life. They made no sound. Their movements were so gentle that only in the quietest moments could you catch a very faint sound, like soft whispers of water. They were unseen helpers, silent companions in the fog. Their appearance brought a mysterious yet warm touch to your simple life. You began to realize you weren't the only resident on this lonely island anymore. You, Edmund, at the Ailsa Craig Lighthouse were used to the roar of storms, but this time a massive storm was coming. Beneath the sea, a strong air current was building up. Waves rose like mountains, and the sky was covered in dark gray clouds, as if the end of the world was near. Now, lay flat on your back with your knees bent and feet flat. Gently place one hand on your stomach and the other on your chest. As you take a deep breath in, feel your stomach gently rise beneath your hand, keeping your chest relatively still. As you breathe out, your stomach slowly lowers. Each breath should be deep and rhythmic, focusing on the rise and fall of your stomach. Let this steady breathing rhythm bring you deep relaxation, helping you withstand the story's storm. You knew exactly what a storm like this meant. The supply boat, that lifeline connecting you to the outside world every few months, was completely cut off. The storm blocked all shipping routes, trapping you entirely on this isolated island. In such harsh weather, food and fuel were being used up much faster than expected, and your supplies were quickly shrinking. The feeling of loneliness and scarcity had never been so clear. You knew this was a constant battle, a fight against nature's power. Right at this desperate point, your diary entries became faster and full of amazement. You noticed that the mysterious creatures didn't disappear in the storm as you might have expected. Instead, they became even more active. In the strong wind and rain, they moved around the lighthouse, their blue glow standing out brightly in the dark fog. There seemed to be more of them too, forming a pulsing halo of light that spun around the lighthouse. What shocked you was seeing them start to point their glowing tentacles in specific directions. At first, you thought it was just them moving randomly, but soon you realized their movements had a purpose. Through the lighthouse window, you could vaguely see in the wind and rain that some fishing boats, blown off course by the storm, were lost in the thick fog. They were sounding desperate foghorns, looking for direction in the vast open sea. Yet, those fishing boats, after seeing your lighthouse's light and seemingly guided by those glowing creatures, actually started to change direction. You saw that, led by those blue lights, they avoided hidden rocks, went around the worst of the storm, and miraculously steered into relatively safe waters. This wasn't just a coincidence once or twice, it happened repeatedly. These mysterious creatures, at the most dangerous times, became silent guides for lost ships. You were deeply moved in that moment. An idea like the lighthouse's beam suddenly cut through all the fog in your mind. These weren't just mysterious creatures. They were the souls of the lighthouse keepers who had given their lives to this very lighthouse. Even after they passed away, they hadn't left. They had become this forgotten light, continuing to protect this part of the sea, guiding those who were lost. They weren't from the land, nor were they any sea creatures you knew. Instead, in their own unique way, they carried on their respect for life and their role as protectors. However, when the storm finally calmed down and the supply boat could sail again, allowing you to connect with the outside world, a bigger challenge appeared. You wanted to tell the world about these incredible discoveries, especially to the boat crews who had been saved. You carefully wrote down every detail in your diary, ready to share your experiences with the arriving sailors. When you tried to describe how these glowing creatures from the mist had saved lost ships, you were met with doubtful and confused looks. They were simple fishermen and sailors, and their world was real and concrete. They believed in the lighthouse's light, and they trusted your experience and judgment, but they couldn't understand the idea of glowing jellyfish-like creatures guiding ships. Edmund, have you been alone too long? Are you thinking too much? An old captain asked, with kind worry in his voice. You tried to describe how they looked, how they acted, how they moved around your lighthouse. You even drew sketches of them in your diary, but your words felt so weak, and your description sounded to them like old tales of sea monsters. They could believe the lighthouse's guidance, but they couldn't believe in things from the mist. You didn't give up. You tried hard to explain, using your most sincere voice to convince these villagers who believed only what they could see. This wasn't a heated argument, but a quiet, somewhat helpless attempt to persuade. You understood their doubts. After all, these things were beyond normal understanding. But you also knew clearly that what you had seen was real. This calm showing, not preaching attitude was central to your efforts. You didn't argue, just calmly repeated your observations, describing the miracle of the guided ships. But the harder you tried, the deeper their doubt became. You felt that helplessness, that feeling of being isolated from the world again. Your diary recorded this struggle. They are so real, so good. Why does no one believe? You found that you were facing not just the challenges of nature, but also the limits of human understanding. You learned to keep your secret within, continuing your silent connection with these mysterious beings. You realized that some truths perhaps belong only to the few who can see them. Time slipped away quietly, like the tides around Ailsa Craig, rising and falling day after day. Your years at the lighthouse, Edmund, also slowly came to an end. You were old, and your body wasn't as strong as when you were young, but your heart had become more full and calm because of those silent companions. You guarded the lighthouse and kept this unknown secret until one day, a new lighthouse keeper arrived to take your place. You left that lighthouse, left that part of the sea, taking with you the incredible notes in your diary and the memories of your time with the creatures in the mist. Your story, along with your diary, was gently covered by the dust of time, quietly resting in a forgotten corner. On the last page of your own lighthouse logbook, after recording all the handover details, you picked up your pen and solemnly also wrote down that long Poseidon phrase. They came from the mist. Now, gently curl into a child's pose, resting your forehead softly on the bed. You can stretch your arms forward or place them back alongside your body. Feel your spine relax and your hips gently open. This pose symbolizes returning to peace and calm, helping to release body tension and prepare for deep sleep. With each exhale, gently let go of all thoughts and tiredness. Decades later, history moved into a new era. The Ailsa Craig Lighthouse, having withstood countless storms, still stood alone. Another new lighthouse keeper, a young man named Ian, was sent to the island. Curious about history, he began to explore every part of the old lighthouse. One sunny afternoon, Ian was cleaning the attic at the top of the lighthouse. This attic was where old items and broken equipment were stored. It was full of dust and old smells. He pushed open a creaky wooden door, and sunlight streamed through a small window, lighting up piles of stuff in the corner. In one dusty wooden box, Ian found an old telescope. The telescope looked very old, with rust covering its brass tube and blurry glass lenses. Ian carefully picked it up and wiped the dust off the lenses with his sleeve, held the telescope up, pointing it out the window at the wide blue ocean, trying to see the distant horizon. Just then, he noticed a tiny inscription, almost worn away, on one of the telescope's lenses. He squinted, making out the faint lines, and finally saw the simple two words. Ian felt a bit confused. Who would carve words like that on a telescope? Was it a previous keeper? Thanking for what? This small detail, like a pebble thrown into a calm lake, caused ripples in his mind. He didn't know what story was behind this thank you or how it connected to the lighthouse's secrets. However, as he stood there with the telescope, looking out the window again, the sun was slowly setting into the sea. The sunset painted the sky a mix of oranged and violet, and the sea sparkled. In that golden light, Ian saw something unbelievable. Not far from the lighthouse, on the sea, in the last bit of light before night took over, he saw some faint shapes. They were half see-through, with a soft, deep blue glow floating gracefully in the seawater. Sometimes they rose, sometimes they sank, as if dancing silently with the rhythm of the sunset. They moved through the water gently and harmoniously, like mysterious spirits saying goodbye to the sea and paying tribute to the lighthouse. Ian felt a strange sense of awe. He didn't know what these creatures were, nor had he ever heard any legends about them, but a wonderful feeling welled up inside him, a resonance that echoed the thank you carved on the telescope. He seemed to sense that there was a deep, unknown connection between these creatures and the lighthouse. Perhaps the thank you on the telescope wasn't meant for humans. Perhaps it was Edmund's quiet farewell to those who, like him, had guarded the lighthouse with their souls, thanking them for their silent company and help during those long, lonely nights. This story is about you, Edmund, a forgotten lighthouse keeper. Your diary, your discoveries, and those forgotten lights formed from the souls of keepers together weave a tale of loneliness, curiosity, silent help, and finally, rescue. It reminds us that some duties don't end when life does. They transform into another kind of guardianship, and even in the most remote places, in the most ordinary lives, hidden wonders and connections can exist. Now that the story has ended, do you feel completely relaxed? Let your breathing stay smooth and deep, feeling every muscle in your body sink into comfort and peace. As you close your eyes and recall the loneliness of the Ailsa Craig Lighthouse, imagining those deep blue lights shimmering in the mist, may this calm